I'm Jason Harper, 51 years old, founder and CEO of HARPER Technologies. Sounds fancy, right? It wasn't always like this. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, not by a long shot. My mom, she worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. She was tough, harder than anyone I knew. And me, I was just a kid, trying to make sense of a world that seemed way out of reach. I started out in tech support, answering calls from people who couldn't even figure out how to turn on their computers. But I worked my ass off, stayed late, learned what I could, and climbed that ladder, bit by bit, one rung at a time. Now, HARPER Technologies is a multi-billion-dollar company, and I've got employees that depend on me to make decisions that shape the tech world. It's a good life, don't get me wrong, but it didn't come easy. I earned every last bit of it. Then there's my son, Ethan. He's in college now, studying finance. He's smart, driven, everything I hoped he'd be. And recently he got engaged to Julia Price, a girl from one of the wealthiest families in Boston. Julia's got this old money, perfect background vibe, and when I first met her, I thought maybe she was the one for him. She seemed nice enough, but I can't shake this feeling that her family might not be too thrilled with him, let alone with me. I was proud of Ethan, don't get me wrong. But when I heard about the engagement party they were throwing at some upscale private club in Boston, I felt this knot in my stomach. I knew Julia's family was loaded, but I didn't realize just how much the difference in our backgrounds would matter. Ethan wanted me there, of course, but I couldn't help but wonder how they'd treat me. Would I be the odd one out? I didn't know what to expect, but I was sure as hell going to try to enjoy it, for Ethan's sake. The rest of it? We'd see. I arrived at the club a little before the start of the party, figuring it would give me time to get settled and figure out the lay of the land. It wasn't until I pulled up to the valet and stepped out of the car that I started to feel it, the weight of the difference between my world and theirs. I was wearing a tailored suit, nothing flashy but sharp enough for an occasion like this. But when I looked around, I saw everyone else in designer stuff. Shiny, perfect, obviously expensive. The women's dresses glittered in the soft evening light, and the men's suits looked like something out of a magazine. I felt like a fake. I made my way to the entrance, trying to keep my head up. The guy at the door, security, looked me up and down as I walked up, his eyes narrowing just a little. He didn't even smile. "Name?" he asked, holding out a clipboard, his voice flat, like he was bored out of his mind. "Jason Harper," I said, trying to sound casual. He scanned the list slowly, making a show of it, like he was checking the name of some nobody. After a second, he looked back up at me, raised an eyebrow, and barely nodded. "You're on the list," he said, still not offering any warmth, just motioning me past him like I wasn't worth another look. Inside, the place was everything you'd expect. Marble floors, polished wood, chandeliers that looked like they cost more than my first house. The whole vibe screamed old money, like a museum. But with people who didn't just own history, they were living it. I spotted Julia's parents immediately. Thomas, her dad, was standing by the bar, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my first car. Caroline, her mom, was nearby, chatting with a group of women whose names I didn't catch. Neither of them seemed to notice me right away, so I stood there for a minute, unsure if I should approach or wait for someone to come to me. Finally, Thomas turned and saw me. He offered a tight smile and a handshake, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. He asked, "So, what do you do, Jason?" I could feel my pulse pick up a little. I wasn't sure what he expected, but it wasn't a CEO. "I'm the CEO of HARPER Technologies. We're in software and hardware development." He nodded a little too slowly and then turned to someone else, like he'd already lost interest. Caroline was standing nearby, still pretending to be busy with her conversation. When she turned and saw me, her eyes flicked to my suit, then back to my face. It was quick, but I saw it, like she was trying to figure out how much she had to pretend. "So, you manage the business?" she asked, her tone more like she was humoring me than actually interested. "Yeah, I built it from the ground up," I said, forcing a smile. "Started in tech support." She gave a small, polite nod, but there was a hint of judgment there. Maybe it was the way she said manage, like it was a polite euphemism for something beneath her. She said. "That's nice." She didn't even try to hide the way she looked away after that, like I was more of a footnote than someone worth engaging with. I tried to shake it off. I wasn't here for them anyway. I was here for Ethan. I scanned the room for him, but couldn't find him in the crowd. He was probably off somewhere mingling, talking to people I didn't know. That's when I started hearing the murmurs, low but not quiet enough. People were talking about blue-collar workers and how out of place they felt at an event like this. It made my stomach twist. I didn't have time to figure out who said it, though, because just then, a staff member led me to my seat. "Right here, Mr. Harper," he said, gesturing toward the back of the room. The table wasn't in a corner, but it might as well have been. It was clear I wasn't meant to be part of the main action. Not that it mattered, right? I wasn't going to let it get to me. I took my seat, trying to keep my chin up, but I could feel the stares, the silence when I walked in. People were looking, maybe not at me directly, but I could feel the weight of their judgment like a physical presence. A few whispers, a few raised eyebrows. And then, a staff member came by with a glass of water and said, "Just making sure you're comfortable, Mr. Harper." He said it like it was a kindness, but I knew it was more about putting me in my place. I forced myself to smile and thanked him, but it was clear. This seat wasn't for comfort. It was for the guy who didn't belong. And as the evening wore on, I couldn't help but feel the truth in that. I was still sitting at the back of the room, trying to keep my cool. The conversations around me blended into a dull hum, but I kept catching pieces of words here and there. Blue collar, out of place, uncomfortable. I could practically feel the whispers as they hovered in the air, thick with judgment. It wasn't anything I hadn't experienced before, but the sting was sharper this time. This wasn't just about me. It was about Ethan. I spotted him across the room, shaking hands with some guests, his smile wide and genuine. He looked happy, and I couldn't help but feel proud of him. This was his moment, and I didn't want to ruin it for him. But when I saw him duck out of the crowd, his expression changing, I knew something wasn't right. I stood up, ready to check in on him, when I overheard their voices, Ethan's and Julia's, coming from a side hallway just off the main room. It was quiet enough that I had to listen closely, but I heard it. Ethan was arguing. "Why are you acting like this?" Ethan's voice was tight, like he was trying to stay calm but was losing it. "Dad's been nothing but kind to you, to your family. You can't just ignore Hire like that." "I'm not ignoring him," Julia snapped back, her voice sharp. "I'm just saying it's a misunderstanding. Everything will be fine with him." I couldn't help but eavesdrop. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to know what was happening. "That's not the point, Julia." Ethan's voice broke slightly. "You've been rude to him. You've been rude to me." There was a pause, and then Julia's response was quieter, but I could hear the edge in it. "Look, Ethan, I don't know why he's here. Your dad's background, it's just not the right fit for this kind of thing, okay? I don't want to explain it again." And that was it. My stomach dropped, and I felt like someone had kicked me in the gut. The words stung more than I could have imagined, especially coming from someone I thought would be family. I couldn't move for a second, just frozen in place, my heart racing. Then, as I stood there, I heard Margaret's voice, low and smooth, carrying over from a few feet away. "You know, some people just don't understand the social dynamics of these things," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Ethan shouldn't have to be embarrassed by someone who isn't properly cultured. It's just not fair to him." I clenched my fists, holding back whatever rage I could feel bubbling up inside me. Not properly cultured. That was how they saw me, how they saw us. Not good enough, not refined enough. I'd worked my entire life for this. I didn't come from money. I didn't inherit anything. I built everything from the ground up, and they were treating me like I was less than nothing. As I stood there, wrestling with the hurt, Ethan came around the corner, his face conflicted. He spotted me instantly, his expression faltering before he forced a smile. "Dad, hey," he said, his voice tight. He walked over to me quickly, glancing back toward Julia and Margaret. "I'm sorry about all this," he said, a little too fast, like he was trying to smooth it over. "You don't have to apologize for them," I said, not even trying to hide the edge in my voice. "I'm not the one who needs to apologize." Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, but stopped himself. He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "Look, I'll talk to Julia. This isn't what I wanted, I swear. It'll get better, okay?" I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about the way he said it felt off, like he wasn't sure himself. "I don't need you to fix it, Ethan," I said, shaking my head. "This is your engagement, not mine. Don't waste your time trying to make me fit into something that doesn't want me." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "It's fine, really. Just, let's not make a scene here, okay? Not tonight. It's about you, not me. He hesitated, clearly torn between his loyalty to me and his fiancée, but he nodded, though there was a look in his eyes like he wasn't sure what to do next. "Thanks, Dad," he muttered, his voice small, before turning back toward the party. I watched him go, my chest tight. He didn't get it, not fully, but maybe he would one day. I wasn't sure, but for now I let it slide. I couldn't make a scene, not at his engagement party. So I stayed quiet, let the whispers float around me, and kept my distance. The night was theirs, not mine. I needed a break. The noise, the whispers, the subtle glances, they were all suffocating. So I stepped away from the main room, into a quieter area near the kitchen. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I just needed space to breathe, to gather myself. I leaned against the wall, my fingers tightening around the glass of water I was holding. I couldn't help but feel out of place. I tried to focus on the sound of the staff moving around the kitchen, the clink of silverware, the hum of distant conversations. But then I heard it. It wasn't loud enough to be an accidental slip. It was a private conversation, meant to be heard only by the person it was intended for. I froze when I recognized the voices, Julia and Caroline, standing just around the corner, out of sight, but close enough for me to catch every word. "I just don't understand why he has to be here," Julia was saying, her voice tight with frustration. "This whole thing is a nightmare. Dad's right. His background is just too rough. It's going to hurt my family's reputation." My chest tightened. I wanted to walk away. I really did, but I couldn't move, couldn't make a sound. I was pinned there, forced to listen to every word, every insult. Caroline's voice came next, lower and more measured, but there was no mistaking the thin layer of disapproval beneath her tone. "I know, darling, but you can't just back out now, not with everything already planned. It'd be a scandal. People will talk." She paused, and I could hear her take a deep breath. "We'll just have to manage it, like we always do." "Manage it?" Julia's voice raised a bit, her disbelief clear. "How am I supposed to go through with this, knowing he's going to be there, acting like he belongs? He doesn't. It's embarrassing, Mom. I just wish he weren't here at all. His presence it's just wrong." I stood there, unable to move, barely able to breathe. I had to keep my composure. I couldn't let myself react, not yet. But the sting of those words, the way Julia saw me as nothing more than an embarrassment to her perfect little life, it cut deeper than I thought possible. I never imagined she would think so little of me, let alone say it so freely. I took a slow, deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. My fingers trembled around my phone as I pulled it from my pocket. Without thinking, I typed a quick message to Carmen, my business manager. She was one of the few people who knew how to help me handle situations like this. Calm, professional, no nonsense. "I need you to join me here. Now." I hit send, my pulse quickening as I read over the words. I knew this wasn't something I could handle on my own anymore. I had to take control. I couldn't let this go. I wouldn't let them treat me like this, not for another minute. For a moment, I just stood there in the silence that followed their conversation, staring down at my phone screen as if it would somehow give me the answers I needed. But all I felt was the weight of their words pressing down on me. I knew what I had to do. I had worked too damn hard to get to where I was to let someone, anyone, make me feel small. Julia's family? They were never going to respect me, not with their old money ways and their perfect little lives. But I wasn't going to let them treat me like I didn't matter, like I wasn't worthy of respect. I looked up, wiping my hands on my pants, steeling myself. I wasn't going to be the victim here. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. I wasn't that kid anymore, sitting in a rundown apartment, dreaming of a future that felt out of reach. I'd earned everything I had, and if Julia and her family couldn't see that, then they didn't deserve my time. Carmen texted back almost immediately. "On my way." I took another deep breath, my resolve hardening. It was time to handle this. Time to take control for my son, for me, and for everything I'd worked my ass off to build. No more waiting, no more pretending. I walked back toward the main area, my mind focused, my steps deliberate. Carmen and Greg, the club manager, were already waiting for me near the entrance. Carmen gave me a look, her eyes scanning my face, as she could probably tell I wasn't in the mood for any more games. Greg nodded, his presence steady, like he knew what was coming. The three of us moved through the crowd, and it didn't take long to find Julia and Thomas standing together near the bar. Caroline was somewhere else, thankfully, avoiding this confrontation like she always did when things got uncomfortable. I wasn't about to let this slide anymore. I stopped in front of them, took a deep breath, and then asked, as calmly as I could manage, "Would you like to explain what I just overheard?" Thomas's face hardened immediately. "What conversation?" he asked, his tone defensive, like he was trying to brush it off. "I heard you, both of you. I know exactly what was said," I replied, keeping my voice steady but firm. "I'm asking if you'd like to explain it." For a second, Thomas looked like he might try to talk his way out of it, but then he seemed to realize I wasn't backing down. His jaw clenched, and he gave me a tight, dismissive smile. "It was a misunderstanding. Nothing more." "Misunderstanding?" I repeated, the word tasting bitter. "I heard everything, Thomas. I don't think it was a misunderstanding at all." Julia shifted uncomfortably beside her father, looking like she was trying to figure out how to get out of this. She finally met my eyes, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something. Regret, maybe, but it disappeared too quickly. I didn't think you'd be this upset," Julia said, her voice a little too high-pitched. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Look, Jason, it's not personal. It's just..." "Just what?" I interrupted, the anger starting to creep into my voice now. "Because I'm not from the right background? Because I didn't grow up with money? Is that it?" She hesitated, biting her lip. Then, with a deep breath, she said what I already knew was coming. "You're just not the right fit for our family, Jason. I mean, your background, your business, it's just not the same." A small laugh escaped me. It wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was the bitter kind, the one that came from realizing just how little she understood. "And you think that's what matters?" I asked, my voice rising now. "You think your family's fit is what's going to make or break anything? Julia, this isn't about appearances. This is about respect, about who I am, not about where I come from." She opened her mouth like she was going to argue, but I kept going, not letting her off the hook. "I built everything from the ground up. I didn't inherit a damn thing. Every step I've taken, I've earned. And you're going to sit there and tell me that I'm not good enough for your family because I didn't grow up like you? That's insulting. It's not just insulting to me, it's insulting to my son." Thomas tried to cut in, his voice smooth and practiced, the way people try to calm down a situation they know is about to get worse. "Look, no offense was meant, Jason. We didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. It's just, well, you know how these things are." "No," I said, holding up a hand, cutting him off. "You don't get to pretend like this is just a misunderstanding. You know exactly what you're doing. And Julia," I turned to her, "your attitude is a problem, not just for me, but for Ethan's future. He's already caught between two worlds, and now you're showing him that the world you come from values image over anything real, over hard work, over integrity." Julia's face flushed, but she didn't say anything. Her silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. I looked at Thomas and Caroline's empty eyes, and I felt a sudden urge to just walk away. This wasn't going to change. They weren't going to see things the way they needed to. They weren't going to understand what really mattered. I stepped back, straightened my jacket, and looked at them one last time. This isn't about money or status. This is about the kind of person you want Ethan to become. So think about that before you keep pushing him into this world that doesn't give a damn about him. Or me. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, my heart pounding in my chest, and pulled out my phone as I walked away. I texted Ethan, "Meet me outside, now." I didn't look back, not once. I waited outside, leaning against the cold stone of the club's entrance, trying to breathe in the cool air and shake off the heat building inside me. The party felt so far away now. In the distance, I could still hear the faint buzz of voices, but it all felt so hollow. I didn't belong there, not anymore. Then I saw Ethan. He was walking toward me, looking confused, his brow furrowed like he couldn't figure out what was going on. His eyes searched mine for some kind of explanation, but I could see the nervousness behind the calm facade. "Dad," he said, his voice cautious. "What's going on? Why's Mom upset? Why did you leave like that?" I took a deep breath. I wasn't angry at him, but I had to tell him everything. He needed to hear it from me, not from anyone else. "Ethan," I started, my voice steady but carrying the weight of everything I'd been holding in. I overheard something. Julia and her mom. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to get the words out. They think I'm an embarrassment. Julia said it. She said my background would hurt her family's reputation, and she wishes I wasn't even here. Ethan's face dropped. He blinked, like he didn't quite understand at first. Then his eyes narrowed in shock. She said that? His voice cracked slightly, like it didn't even make sense to him. She actually said that? I nodded. Yeah, she did. And her mother agreed, said we were a misunderstanding. I couldn't hide the bitterness in my tone. They don't think I belong in their world, Ethan. They think my success doesn't count because I didn't come from money. He stood there, his mouth opening and closing, like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Finally, he sighed, running his hand through his hair. I don't know what to say. I've been feeling like something's off, but I didn't know it was this bad. His voice was low, conflicted. I mean, I knew Julia was different, but I didn't realize how much her family had influenced me. They've made me feel like my background isn't good enough, you know? I stepped closer to him, my voice softer now, trying to make him see what I had learned the hard way. Ethan, people's worth isn't defined by their wealth or background. You know that, right? Look, I didn't have everything handed to me. I worked my ass off to build what I have. Everything I've done on my own. No help from anyone. Ethan's eyes met mine, and I could see the mix of admiration and guilt there. I know you did, Dad. You've worked so hard. But I guess I never really saw how much Julia's world was starting to change the way I saw things. I never thought about how toxic some of their attitudes are. I nodded, feeling a tight knot in my chest loosen just a little. It's easy to get caught up in all that, Ethan. The money, the status, the image. But it's all just smoke and mirrors. What matters is the person you are, not the label someone else tries to stick on you. He stared at me for a long moment, like he was processing everything. I could see it in his eyes. He was starting to understand, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy for him. He wasn't going to snap out of it just because I told him what was right. He exhaled slowly, looking away for a second before meeting my gaze again. I don't know what to do, Dad. I want to be with Julia, but I don't know if I can just ignore what she and her family think. I don't want to disappoint you, but I also don't want to keep living in their world like it's all normal. I put a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. You're not disappointing me, Ethan. You've got to figure out what's right for you. Don't let anyone, not even me, tell you who you should be. But don't let someone else's idea of what's acceptable tear you down either. What matters is that you stay true to who you are, no matter what anyone else says. Ethan nodded slowly, his expression softening as he processed my words. I'll think about it, Dad. I just need some time. I need to figure this out with Julia. But I don't want you to think I don't get it. I do. I gave him a small smile, though it didn't feel like much of one. Take all the time you need, son. Just don't let them make you feel ashamed of who you are, where you come from, or what you've accomplished. Because you've already got everything that matters. There was a pause, and then he sighed, pushing his hands in his pockets. I'll go back inside, he said, sounding like he was more resigned than ready. I need to talk to Julia. Thanks, Dad, for everything. I watched him walk back toward the club, my heart heavy but proud. I knew this wasn't the end of it. Things might never be the same between Ethan and Julia, and maybe it wasn't meant to be, but I hoped he'd learn something from this, something real. I stood there for a while, alone in the cool night air. The future felt uncertain, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel small again. Not for anyone. Not ever. A few days later, I got a call from Julia's parents. They wanted to meet. At first, I didn't answer. I wasn't sure what they could possibly have to say after everything that had happened. But they kept calling, and eventually I figured I'd hear them out. What was the worst that could happen? I already knew they didn't respect me, and I wasn't expecting that to change. They suggested a quiet spot in the city, a place where we could talk things through. When I arrived, Julia's parents were already seated at a table in a private room, looking just as polished as ever. I could feel the tension in the air the second I walked in. I didn't say a word, just took a seat across from them. Caroline gave me a tight smile, and Thomas didn't even bother with pleasantries. The silence stretched between us like a thick wall. Then Caroline spoke up, her voice smoother than I expected. We've been thinking about everything that happened, Jason. she said, not quite meeting my eyes. And we realize things were said that shouldn't have been. We want to make things right for the sake of our daughter, for Ethan. I raised an eyebrow, not buying the sudden concern, but I stayed quiet, waiting for the rest. We've decided, Thomas jumped in, to offer you a gift, a substantial one. We'd like to make a donation to one of your tech ventures, something to show that we're serious about mending things. I stared at them, trying to keep my face neutral, but inside, I could feel a wave of anger starting to rise. A donation? Money? Was that supposed to fix this? I didn't react right away, giving myself a moment to cool down. I leaned forward, keeping my voice level but sharp. Let me get this straight. You think throwing money at the problem is going to fix it? That it'll make everything go away? Caroline opened her mouth, but I cut her off. I don't need your money. I don't need anyone's handouts. What I want, what I deserve, is respect. Not some cheap gesture to make you feel better about how you treated me. Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with my reaction. He tried to play it off. Jason, we're not trying to insult you. We just thought this might be a way to show we're committed to making things right. I wasn't having it. You don't get to buy respect. That's not how this works. I've built everything I have from scratch. I didn't ask for help, and I sure as hell didn't ask for a charity case. What I want from you is simple. Respect. Acknowledgement for what I've done, not some check that's supposed to fix everything. Julia sat quietly beside her parents, her face flushed, her eyes darting around like she was hoping this would just go away. But she couldn't hide from it anymore. Not from me. Not from what she'd done. I turned to her, letting the words land hard. Julia, this isn't about appearances. It's not about money. You made it clear what you thought of me, what you thought of my worth. And I'm not going to let you hide behind your family's money and prestige to make things right. You've got to earn my respect, not try to buy it. Her face crumpled just a little, and I saw the guilt in her eyes. But guilt wasn't enough. Not anymore. I didn't mean to hurt you, Julia said, her voice small. I didn't know how to deal with it. My family, they're just not used to people like you. I exhaled sharply, leaning back in my chair. People like me, I repeated. What, because I didn't have the right background? Because I didn't have a trust fund to fall back on? Because I actually worked for everything I have? She winced, clearly realizing the gravity of what she'd said. I know, I see that now. I do. And I'm sorry. I was wrong. Sorry doesn't change anything, I said, my voice hardening. Not without action. You can't just apologize and expect everything to go back to normal. You've got to do better than that. Caroline shifted in her seat, glancing at Julia, then back at me. We want to fix this. We don't want any more tension between our families. Fix it? I said, shaking my head. It's not something you can fix. This is bigger than that. Your family's disregard for hard work, for authenticity. It won't work in Ethan's life. And you know what? It's not going to work in mine either. Thomas opened his mouth to argue, but I raised a hand, cutting him off. I've had enough. There's nothing left to say. You've shown me who you really are, and that's something I can't unsee. I'm done here. I stood up, my chest tight, but my resolve clearer than ever. This was over. There was no coming back from this. I didn't need their approval, their money, or their apology. I turned toward the door, not bothering to look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I had to do. I knew what Ethan had to do. And the rest of it? It didn't matter anymore. As I walked out, I felt a strange kind of peace settle over me. I was done trying to fit into a world that didn't want me. I was done letting anyone make me feel small. And when I stepped outside, I knew things were finally heading in the direction they should have been all along. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Ethan called. I'd just finished a run and was leaning against the kitchen counter, wiping the sweat from my forehead when my phone buzzed. Seeing his name pop up, I felt my chest tighten. He hadn't called in a while, and I knew it wasn't just to check in. Hey, Dad, his voice sounded off, distant, like he was still working through something in his head. Hey, you okay? I asked, leaning back, feeling a sudden rush of nerves. It had been a few weeks since everything had settled, but I hadn't expected things to be over just like that. I think I've figured it out, Dad, he said, his voice low. I'm done with Julia. I wasn't surprised, but hearing him say it made something shift in my chest, like a weight being lifted and replaced with a whole new set of worries. What happened, Ethan? I wasn't ready to see it before, but now I can't ignore it anymore. he admitted, a tinge of regret in his voice. I didn't realize how deep her values ran, how different they are from mine. She kept trying to hide you, keep me away from the things that matter to me, like you and my mom. I can't be with someone who looks down on you, on where we come from. The relief I felt was almost immediate. It wasn't just about Julia. It was about Ethan. The fact that he was finally seeing things for what they were. I'd worried about him for so long, worried that he'd be caught between two worlds, losing sight of who he really was. But hearing him speak up like this made me proud in a way I didn't expect. Ethan, I'm proud of you, I said, keeping my voice steady, but it was hard to hide the emotion. I know it's tough, but you did the right thing. You don't need to stay in something that makes you feel like you're hiding who you are, or who we are. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, maybe processing everything in real time. It's hard, you know? I thought maybe I could make it work, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect you, who makes me feel ashamed of my family. I understood. I'd been there myself, years ago, fighting my own battles for respect, for my own identity. But seeing Ethan fight it out, he was starting to get it, starting to learn how to stand up for himself, to know that his worth wasn't tied to someone else's standards. You don't have to apologize for what's right, Ethan, I told him, keeping my voice as calm as I could. I know this wasn't easy, but love should never make you feel ashamed of who you are or where you come from. If someone can't see the value in that, then they're not the one for you. I get that now, he said, his voice softer, a little clearer. I think I've always known it deep down, but it took me a while to see how bad it really was, how much I was compromising just to make other people happy. I thought about that for a second. In a way, that was what I'd been trying to teach him all along. Not just about standing up for himself, but about finding the strength to walk away when something wasn't right. It was about integrity, about knowing when to hold firm to who you were, no matter what anyone else thought. I'm proud of you, Ethan. You've come a long way in a short time. I meant it. I'd watched him grow up so fast, but now I was seeing him evolve into someone who understood what really mattered. And it wasn't money or status or the image that someone else tried to impose on him. It was the real stuff: family, respect, authenticity. Thanks, Dad, he said, a quiet, grateful note in his voice. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. Anytime, I said, feeling the weight of the conversation shift. And you don't ever have to apologize for doing what's right. You've got to take care of yourself, first and foremost. The rest of it will fall into place. I know, he replied, a hint of a smile in his tone. I think I've figured out a lot about myself, about what I want. It's just, I don't want to keep getting caught up in someone else's idea of what's supposed to be. I want to move forward, make my own decisions. That's the best thing you can do, I said, meaning every word. You're not alone in this. You've got me, your mom, your family. We're all here, no matter what happens next. Yeah, he said, his voice warmer now, more sure of itself. Thanks for everything, Dad. I'm going to figure it out, one step at a time. You're going to be just fine, Ethan, I said, smiling even though he couldn't see it. Just remember that you're enough, no matter what. We said our goodbyes, and I sat there for a while after, letting the quiet of the room settle around me. I was proud of Ethan, proud of how far he'd come. But even more than that, I was proud of how he was finally learning to trust his own instincts, to put his own integrity first. It wasn't easy, but it was the right path. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the first step toward a future that was built on the things that really mattered: respect, family, and the strength to stand on his own. I didn't know what would happen with Ethan and Julia, but for the first time in a while, I felt confident that whatever came next, Ethan would be okay. More than okay. He'd be better than okay. It's funny how much can change in just a few months. Looking back, I can see how far Ethan's come, not just in his relationship with Julia, but in himself. When he first got together with her, he was still figuring out who he was, torn between his own roots and the world she came from. But now, he's with someone new, someone who actually sees him for who he is, not for some idea of what he should be, and for that, I couldn't be prouder. It wasn't just about the relationship, it was about him learning that he doesn't have to compromise, that his worth isn't defined by money or status or anyone else's expectations. He's finally figured that out, and I think I've been a part of that, showing him that authenticity is more valuable than any shiny image, that the most important thing in life is being true to yourself, no matter what anyone else thinks. As for me, I've moved on. Julia, her family, they don't matter anymore. I don't need their approval. I don't need anyone to validate the life I've built. I've spent too much of my life trying to prove myself to people who weren't worth the effort. They've got their world, I've got mine. And I've realized that the people who truly matter, the ones who appreciate hard work, loyalty, and honesty, those are the ones I need in my life, not the ones who see value in appearances. It's a strange kind of peace that comes with letting go of all the noise, the worry about how others see me, the pressure to fit into their expectations. It's all faded into the background now. I've learned that my legacy isn't about the money I've made or the name I've built. It's about the values I've instilled in Ethan. It's about showing him that no matter what happens in life, you don't compromise who you are for anyone. Looking ahead, I feel more confident than I ever have. I've got a great business, a son who is becoming his own man, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing I did the right thing. The future's not something to fear anymore. It's a place where I know what matters, where respect and love are the things I'll continue to build my life around. Life's too short to waste on people who don't value hard work, authenticity, or the things that truly count. As I move forward, I've got no regrets, just the satisfaction of knowing I've done things the right way. And when you get to that point, there's nothing left to prove.